Hi, folks, and welcome to Original Firefighter. Original Firefighter is a lifestyle brand inspired by the American Fire Service. From gear for your off days to this podcast, we celebrate the fire service loud and proud every day. Remember, for every purchase you make at Original Firefighter, we give back 5% through our 5-Alarm Give Back program, supporting mental health and wellness for all firefighters. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, and be sure to check out originalfirefighter.com today. Let's get into the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Original Firefighter Podcast Show. I am your host, Will Peterson, and we appreciate you tuning in and listening in each time that we drop one of our episodes. And today's going to be a very special one. I know that I may say that quite often. However, this one is for real, and here's why. We are recording this on September 11th of 2024, which obviously that means it is the 23rd anniversary of September 11th. And we do want to take some time during this episode to remember the firefighters, police officers, and EMTs that were killed on 9/11, along with the 2,753 civilians that were also lost. That was the total number of people lost. And we just want to make sure that we're always keeping those people in our hearts and minds. And so we are going to have a little bit of time in this episode to talk about September 11th and what it still means today. With that said, we always appreciate you tuning in. And with that, I am going to be introducing my guest for today's show. He is a very dear friend of mine. I've worked with him for quite a few years in the fire service. Quite frankly, he doesn't realize this, but I've actually kind of like paid attention to what he's doing because he's got things dialed in. As far as I'm concerned, he is the greatest paramedic that has ever been made. Jeff Althoff, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Jeff, how are you doing this morning?
Good.
And what's going on in Jeff's world?
Good. You know, it's a somber day, right? It's September 11th, and you know, for people in our profession, it was a big day. It was a big day, and it changed operations across the country, and it opened a lot of specialty training stuff
right.
that was that really formalized after that, you know, and the stuff that they did was never done before, you know, and then everybody across the country learned how to do it. So the tragedy did create some positive movement for our profession.
Yeah. We're going to get into that, and but you are right. It did change the landscape pretty much for emergency operations. It opened up, obviously, you know, Department of Homeland Security was born out of that, and you know, under the George H.W. Bush administration. So his presidency, you know, really had to tackle what was this country going to look like after September 11th, and how was how are all 50 states going to have to handle, you know, the new threat, you know, the threat at the homeland. And so we're going to get into all that. I know you've been very instrumental, and you've been very self-focused, and you dove in with, you know, both feet, I think, quite a long time ago in specializing in emergency response and emergency management. So we're going to get into some of that. I do want to welcome you to the show. And what I said in the intro there, I consider you a very good friend, and I appreciate the time that I was able to work with you at RFD, and just glad to have you on the show. I'm curious, what got you into the fire service? Where did you start? How'd you get there? So
I'll get to that, but I'd also like to acknowledge that we worked together, and you were always my company officer, whether I was a firefighter as a lieutenant as a captain, or a lieutenant captain as a district chief, right? So you also mentored me a lot as I developed throughout my career. So
we did work a lot together, didn't we?
We did, right? And
we've got can you pull that photo up?
Yeah, I saw that picture. Yeah,
you did?
Yeah, right. No, I saw that it was on.
Oh
there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you recall the days of that?
Yeah, so that was actually the last fire that Rescue 2 ever went to as a standalone company, right? And it was, I could probably even go back to the house because you and I went around. I think it was a mattress fire, right?
Yeah.
And we ended up getting ahead of the hose line, right? It was super aggressive firefighting, and we only were allowed to do that because our district chief at the time allowed us to operate as a company that was independent of anything else. You know? So I'm actually the only person left on the job from that picture too. So that makes me feel old.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
We were the guinea pigs of that whole situation.
We
right?
were, yeah. And the chief that we had, like, he was instrumental. We were the only shift that ran on that company that had the ability to do what we did.
Yeah.
Really just be firefighter, go out there and find a task, get the task done, and move on to the next one. And it was a great learning time, because it took, for watching you be accountable for your crew without a piece of apparatus to identify it, right? It was an SUV that had a pull-out rack of SCBAs
and slide rack.
Yeah, 3 hand tools is what we had. You know?
And I think we had to go make those.
I think so too.
Like I don't think they were like just claw your way at it.
Right. And when it started, like, remember this too, like the 3 fire companies that ran out of Station 2, there was no still. It was Rescue 2 was first, then Engine 2, then Ladder 2, right?
Yeah.
So we had 35 call days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a learning experience there. Right.
The whole thing was, the idea was to, as I recall it, was to deal with the fact that stations 1 and 2 downtown, they were just inundated with calls. They were just so busy.
Yeah.
And so this was some form or fashion to try to alleviate the number of calls that those engines and ladders were doing. Mm-hmm. So the thought was, well, we'll just throw an SUV there and it'll just go out and just do stuff.
Right. Yep. 100%.
I think it was like, you're going to mostly do EMS, and then we're going to send you a fire every now and then. Yeah. And then we ended up going to a lot of fires.
Well, because they ended up replacing the 3rd engine with us.
Yeah.
Right. And so that
made everyone real happy.
It did. Yeah. So it was, it did on the Rescue 2 guys, but the rest of the people didn't like it. Right.
And we had a great time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, for what it's worth, I've always spoken pretty positive. Like, it wasn't the greatest setup by any means. It wasn't like the ideal rig or truck. It was kind of goofy. To call it what it is, it was kind of goofy. But when we were out and about and going through the streets, it was like, well, I'm going on a shit ton of calls, and I'm going to a bunch of fires. Isn't that what I'm supposed to be excited about doing?
It was the experience, right?
Yeah.
That's all it was. And that's what, even today, that's kind of the thing that I use when I talk to, companies as a district chief now is, what's your experience? You're going to go to a fire, you're going to go to 800 medical calls, right? But your experience is going to be positive if that's what you take from it. And that situation was probably the hardest experience to make positive, but we did it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's a really good way of looking at it. And, so, with that said, I do always make an offering that when we're on the show, I always offer my guests a little bit of bourbon. I do like to partake myself.
I'll have a drink.
So you will. You will.
Oh, okay.
I really appreciate that. Okay, but this is how much I do. We worked a lot together. We've hung out off the job, and so I know my guy. I know the situation here. So I made an effort. I made some effort for you, and I was like, well, how can we make Jeff's experience on this even a little bit better?
I will always say that if you have a fancy something to drink, it is the notes are wasted on my rural taste buds. Let's put it that way, right?
You betcha.
I'm a Coors Light, Miller Lite, Jameson guy, and that's the extent of what I like.
Well, why don't you go ahead and, if you like, you can pop open one of those things there, and let's have a little bit of fun.
And not that I don't enjoy it, but if it's expensive, it's wasted on me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, cheers to. We're gonna put it in the bourbon glass. That's classy.
I actually do like beer out of a cup better, so I do have some bugaboo.
You have just taken the show up a notch.
Yeah.
This is class.
I'll bring it back down. Don't you worry about that. Thank you.
Give it time. So, but getting back to. We're gonna come back to we talked about like 9/11 and what that did for us as firefighters and in the emergency community. But how did you? My question was, how did you get into the fire service? What was it that got you going?
And this is I'm going to say a sentence in here that's really going to get Will upset here. So we'll get there.
Don't say.
You know what I'm going to say, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So I started off as an EMT in college, and I found it as a way that I didn't have to come home in the summertime. I took an EMT basic class as a college student at Western, and then I started as my EMT driver was my actual my first title.
Your card said that
EMT driver. I still have it. That was my name badge, and my job was simply to take the paramedic to either Macomb or St. Francis in Peoria, or Macomb to Memorial or St. John's in Springfield. That was my job. Get them there, get them back. That was it. Drive
the rig.
Yep. And so as you're talking to your partner on the way back, you're like, well, there's got to be more than this, right? So then I then moved into paramedic. And then as you start getting older, you're like, well, how can I make money if I have a family, you know? And so I wanted to be a paramedic in the fire service. And so as I tested, I tested for really four bigger cities, and Rockford, and I actually got hired all four almost at the same time. And I chose Rockford because we have our own ambulance, right? And I wanted to be a transporting paramedic. And so this sort of stems in the conversation. Where is the fire service today? Are we a fire service that delivers medical care, or are we emergency medical services that also dabbles in fire protection?
Man, you're coming right at me. You're really wanting to get under my skin.
I'll
right
never
now.
forget. Like, I remember there was an article in either GEMS or Fire Rescue or something that had that, and I remember printing it off and taping it on your walls in that little office. In that Rescue 2 office. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, GEMS.
Yeah.
Never anything from firehouse or fire engineering. It was always GEMS from Jeff Althoff.
Yeah, right. So not that I knew that would irritate you or anything, right? Like, I've never been that kind of employee or coworker, but yeah. So that's how I got there. So I said, hey, this is for sure. Like, I was a law enforcement student. As I got older, I had buddies who started testing and were employed by police agencies, and they quickly learned that firefighters are loved by the public and police officers are not so much loved by the public, right? And so, you know, like, I liked being a paramedic. I liked that. And so I tested for fire service, and I ended up in Rockford, you know, April 10th of 2000 is when I started, you know. So, so that's how I got into it, and that's how I got here.
April 10th of 2000 was when you started with
Rockford Fire.
Rockford Fire.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So were you serious about the law enforcement side? You said you were going to Western, and you were about
100%. Yeah. Like, I took police tests, right? Like, I was at the same time I just had for the state police, Macomb Police Department, and some of the Quad Cities police departments. And just as my friends, you know, had 1 or 2 years in the police service working for police agencies, I don't think it was what they thought it was going to be. And that was what they related back to me. You know, so
I've always had, you know, and I would imagine some of our listeners and viewers have done this. I'm always intrigued by the individual that ends up doing all three. It ends up being a firefighter, and then they're a police officer, and, you know, by virtue, like you said, I mean, they're somehow involved with EMS, whether they're a paramedic or whatever. But, you know, we both know people that we've worked with that they've got their full-time position with the fire department. Then on their off days, they put on a police uniform, and they're actually doing all three services. I'm always impressed by that.
And there's some agencies that do all three, right? Like, there was, I think Lansing, Illinois was one of them that I had tested for because I thought, oh my gosh, I could do all three.
I think Escanaba, Michigan still does. They have like public safety
model. But I think now, like, the training that goes into each one is so overwhelming. I don't know that you could even stay current on any of the professions if you tried to do all three full time, you know. So
I mean, the qualifications have changed for all all three walks of life, whether you're firefighter, law enforcement, or EMS. The qualifications, the requirements, the continuing education, and then to a degree, and we do often reference, you know, on our show that, you know, one of the main focuses for original firefighters, we think about mental health and stress, physical and mental stress, and the health of the responder. And if you're doing all three, it's like you're literally never giving yourself a break.
When's your decompression time, right?
Yeah. You know, so no, so you got on the Rockford Fire Department in 2000.
2000, yeah.
Yeah, I came on in 96. So we were just a few years apart, but then, you know, like we've already discussed, I mean, we did meet up quite often, had just a bunch of different experiences. Now you are a district chief, and, you know, I guess what has changed in your time, you know, as you've progressed through, well, you know, EMT driver,
right?
Do you still have the card?
Oh yeah, it's my ID card. And actually I was an EMTA, right? So in our state, there used to be EMTA ambulances.
Yep.
And you say that to some guys now and they're like, no, they're basics. I'm like, okay, that's fair, right? That's what it is.
Right.
But it used to be called EMTA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I actually, so, we both have our starts. I started in the little town of Albany, Wisconsin. I then went to Fitchburg, Wisconsin. At Fitchburg, I actually got my EMTI.
An intermediate.
In the intermediate, right? So you could start the IV. I don't remember exactly. Maybe there was like 3 or 4 drugs I could give. But again, you still had to have a paramedic nearby or, that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, and I think they've done away with the intermediate service or the level of that. Maybe some places out there across the country, it's always interesting because you go anywhere in the world or in the country, I should say, is that, metro departments do it one way. The further that you get out west, it becomes a whole, like you're like doctors out there.
Mm-hmm. You have less transport facilities to go to, right? Because it's desert and mountain.
Yeah.
And geographically, we're dense population and we have a lot of resources.
They're like doing like video conferencing with right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Suturing and
treating, like true treating and releasing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, so as you have gone through, you've gone through the same, testing and the criteria to get to the level that you're at today. What along the way have you noticed is like good or bad challenges? What's been what's been the biggest challenge to get to where you're at today? What's been the most rewarding?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is communications, and how we were talked to as new firefighters is not how we talk to new firefighters today.
What do you mean?
I feel like there's we definitely explain.
I know what you mean,
right? Yeah, it used to be, hey, new guy, this is Chief X. I want you to do this, and you're like, yes, sir. Now it's, hey, new guy, this is Chief X. I'd like you to do this because this, and this. And then like, oh, yes, sir, then we'll do that. Right. It's just a different tone. It's a different society is different employees, what's good and bad about that? Well, I definitely think it makes us more socially aware, more professional, right? The way that we used to talk to each other wasn't professional. But I think the weakness of that is, how are we, when things have to get done, do they respond to that? I have to do this now. And I think that we on our fire department, we do a very nice job of recognizing the difference between the two times where, and Chief Hill has done one of these episodes, and he said something to me one time is, I'm democratic until I have to be autocratic, right?
Sure.
And so I've sort of morphed that sentence into, I support the operation until I have to be in charge of it. And that could be a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be a scene. It could be, it could be a personnel problem. Like, I'll let you work through your problems in any way you see fit until we can't do that anymore, Yeah. And I don't feel like chiefs used to do that. I feel like chiefs were always, this is the way it is all the time, in every situation. And we've all heard those stories about chiefs taking command and giving directions on incidents, blocks away from the scene.
Sure.
And now I think our company officers are more professional, more prepared, better trained, better educated, and we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think
there was a time, this again, going back to where we both come from, is that there was a time I remember that we had chief officers that if you were on the ambulance, you did not take command, let alone did you honestly don't even touch them. Like, don't give me a size up. Don't say jack on the radio. Don't
even pull out of the station first, right? Like, take it all the way back to there. If the ambulance is in quarters with a fire company, don't go first.
Yeah,
just don't.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stand on one and say that I kind of think that still should be the way that it is if you're going out the door in that way. I don't know. Old school comes from somewhere, and I don't want to date myself, but I'm probably, I'm at that point now where, okay, I'm a little old school, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think we're better where, now we're asking younger firefighters, since we had to change and become more professional as an organization, as a fire service across the country, human resources kind of had to get involved and say, you're not going to be able to just be autocratic all the time.
Right.
I think the fact that the fire service had to become professional, now the expectation is that for our younger people, they need to become professional rather early in their career. Like, we don't want them to just sit back and arrive at a house fire, let's say, and do nothing. You know, we expect them to perform a certain professional level of expertise, which is now we see them giving size ups, so we see them even maybe possibly taking command until the next, company arrives.
And I think that goes with, when we're speaking only from Rockford experience, right?
Yeah.
And so our paramedics, our firefighter paramedics that are on the ambulance, the senior guys, they have a ton of experience. And so it's not like, I equate sometimes our firefighter paramedics on the ambulance company to an advanced company officer in a less busy department, right? They could have, in 1 year, they could have a career's worth of experience from another department. Rockford never fails to give us experiences.
No.
And I say that to when we get people that come to the stations that are new is, you're going to come to work today and you're going to say, man, I've seen everything, and it's your first day. You're going to come to work the second day and you're going to say, they topped it. They did it. They did it again, right? And even after your time, I'm sure that you just kept building on those experiences that said, I have seen it all. And then you come to work the next day and we do it again and they top it, So I feel like that, as the city of Rockford firefighter, when we talk about our ambulance paramedics, it's different than an ambulance paramedic firefighter from another department because of what we get ourselves into and what the city gives us the opportunity to respond to,
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a change. Whereas before, the command officers, lieutenants, even captains, didn't recognize that we were getting this experience. We were getting this opportunity to serve, right? Like however you want to say it, in bad situations, and everybody who's there is getting that experience. And so our people are very experienced and pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would obviously I'd second everything you just said there. I think for our listeners and viewers, the one thing that we stress is that your department patch is what it is. You signed up, you took the test or whatever you had to do to get on the job to be able to wear the uniform. And so we're all experienced. It's interesting because it's like collectively we're experiencing lots of things that are similar, but let's be realistic that there's a reason why Detroit shows up in Firehouse Magazine, year after year, right, with just incredible footage, photographs and, men and women that just look like they've been put through a meat grinder, right?
Yeah.
So, to say that whether you come from Rockford, Illinois, or you come from Macomb, your hometown, I started out in Albany, and they all have their own little career days. I like to use that's what I call is there's a day there will always be, doesn't matter what department you're on, there will always be what I call a career day, where that situation, that incident, that however you just the call, the incident, however you term it to be, that is going to be the one that's going to challenge you and go, were you ready? Did it prove that you were ready? Did it prove that you maybe slacked off for a long time and kind of thought like nothing big's going to ever happen? Nothing's going to happen.
It will happen though, right? Like
absolutely.
I think that's where your leadership or your company officer, even whatever your role is, if you think it's not going to happen, that's when the word complacency starts to set in, and that's dangerous. Because for all of us in this profession, it's not if, but it's when, right?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
we watch enough news and we know that things are going to happen that are going to put fire service professionals in the first story every single night.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this last work day. If you watch the news, there's always a fire truck or a paramedic or something related to our job in the first story.
Yeah.
Right? One of the first two stories, there might be a big political thing, and then the next thing is a hurricane response or a mass shooting or a car accident or a hazmat or fire or something.
And somehow it always ends up being law enforcement that got the save.
Right, I know, right?
And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Why did I even show up?
We're just there, we're just there to do it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we're on the news or not, but there are incidents, right?
But they are awesome.
There are incidents, and they get to tag along sometimes. Right. But, but I think that, don't be complacent, because it is going to happen. And, your jurisdiction can be overwhelmed by simultaneous ambulance calls or, the collapse of 2 concrete high rises, right? It's what is going to tax your system is based on what's your level of training and how much people do you have?
Yeah.
How much help do you have? Right.
Right.
Everyone's going to get taxed. So
yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And going back to getting taxed, I mean, there again, I would challenge those who love the profession that we're talking about. Like, I call them bleacher creatures. There's let's be honest, there's a couple of different camps of firefighters and first responders, and, some that are phoning it in and some that are, call it Johnny on the spot kind of guy. Right. I think that's kind of a person that you are. And, I personally, I take a lot of pride that I never wanted anyone else to carry my weight. I wanted to be able to say I at least contributed and, maybe did a little bit more, but there are those bleacher creatures that are sitting out there and they're like, I'm a firefighter. But you got to get into, why are you doing this? And I think that September 11th, we referenced that earlier in the show, is that September 11th is it's the cause. It's the question of, well, if you don't know why you're doing this, then maybe every time that September 11th starts to come around, you should pay attention to some of those documentaries that are being played and replayed every year and going, you see what's going on in this video, and these firefighters are just, they're doing everything that they can to get to the situation, to get to ground zero. They were taking over. We have friends that have been on the show from FDNY that, they described that they were overtaking buses. They were taking the buses, like the city buses,
Sure.
and saying, we're taking this bus and we're going to find a way to get down there.
Right. And they were going to do it with no thought of not completing the task, right? Like, that's what we think is task A is complete, move on to task B. There was never any thought that the task A wasn't going to get completed, right? They're going to go put the fire out.
How about the fact that they were probably doing task A, B, C, D, E, F, and G all at the same time?
Correct, yeah. And they had people that could do that. Like, that's the amazing thing is, you take a regular structure fire here in town, you have suppression, search and rescue. Now make that, 1 million square feet more, right? Like, that's the amazing thing is that all of those tasks were still being done simultaneously with very little communication, and they just were going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is by no means, this is not a, apples to apples. I had 2500 North Main, which was a big fire in my career. And I can recall, being there at that fire, and the uncomfortable feeling that I had at the command post was I can't remotely even find the perimeters of this incident. Like, I can't, like, it was so large, it was 3 or 4 city blocks. And I'm like, I just need to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that would be so much better. And I can't even, so now, and that's all I'm saying is, so now I'm thinking about, lower Manhattan and going, where do they start? And I get it. Yeah. They went back to basics is what they did.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I bet you're a very back to basics guy.
Right. Because what makes everything better?
Yeah.
Hose moving towards the fire to put it out. Right.
Yeah.
That always makes things better. And it's dangerous, but that makes the situation better.
I started getting to this point as a chief that I said, if I could just start to let people know that you're doing your job, if you're doing some of the basics, which would be like, for example, as long as that hose is moving forward and not sitting there static, then someone's doing their job. Mm-hmm. From the person on the nozzle, the person backing them up, the person, controlling the door. But you might be an outside person, and you just see that, you hear over the radio, like, hey, we got to get this hose advanced forward. If you're out in the front yard and you find you have a free hand, put that hand on that hose and give them 5 more feet. Like, I got to that point where I was like, just help as much as you possibly can.
Right.
Don't overcomplicate it.
No. Yeah. That's the thing is like all parts of this job are pretty simple, right? It's complex because it's hard, but take the water to the fire, take the patient to the hospital, make the leak stop on the hazardous materials, right? Like that's the simple part of this job. And we oversimplify it sometimes and sell ourselves short with the amount of effort, training, knowledge, skill, and education it takes to get it done,
So you brought up hazmat, and I'm glad you did, because this episode, I don't know if I told you, but I think your episode here is going to be called Hazmat is for Nerds.
Oh, okay. And that's fair.
Is it fair?
It is absolutely fair. I've had some good times and made some good friends in the hazmat world. I've done some stuff on the private side that's been very helped me be successful. And we talked about Chief Hill already, or Kyle Hill, and that's our connection right there, is the hazmat world, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I obviously say that with the tongue-in-cheek aspect, which is if I had, which I did, I had my fair share of. We're gonna pull something up here. What do you think's going on? Can you see this? What do you think's going on? And that you don't have to say the property because you know it. You don't have to say. Don't say the name, but.
Let's go 3.
What's going on here? Do you know?
Engine 7 from ladder 2. We have connected the emergency decon line to your truck. It is not charged.
Aaron, they just connected the emergency.
So what's going on there?
Right. So that's what is that? 6th Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a leak, right?
Yeah.
And what the product is, right? We don't know. And we had something we sort of knew, based on what it was. And I've had a lot of discussions about that incident with the guy that was on the radio there, and what did we do with it? You know? So like, I think there's a couple of trains of thought on that one. And we actually just had something that was kind of similar to that last week, and we did something different with the product.
Okay.
We did. And so, yeah. So that's the thing is, but was anybody hurt, right? Was the end outcome good? And so, both of them, right? But there was definitely two different tactics and different scenarios that arrived. My plume did not look like that, but it contained some of the same product.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I think that, so hazardous materials, because, we've already had a conversation about firefighting and a little bit of,
every call is a hazmat, right? Like, let's be honest. Every call is a hazmat call.
See that? So for viewers and listeners, that's probably the most diplomatic, professional statement that can be made.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you're doing. In fact, if you say that in an interview process, let's say you were being, like you want to go for lieutenant.
Yeah.
Every call as a hazmat call would be the statement. They would just the police and fire commissioner would eat that up.
Right.
They'd be like, this guy is dialed in.
Yeah, but I really believe it. So that's the difference. Yeah.
I know you do, which is why we wanted you on, because you've got a different, you've got a good walk about everything. And what I mean by that is, so for example, we showed you the hazmat there, and I thought you'd have a little bit of fun with that. And it is interesting how with hazardous materials, it's one of those things that people in the fire service, especially, let's be clear, everybody deals with it. I mean, it's not just the fire service, the law enforcement, EMS, city managers, and cleanup crews and contractors. I mean, all get affected by hazmat calls. But to your point about, everybody suffers to a degree. So, let me rephrase. Some people suffer to a degree. I can recall with this one is that, we had a few employees that were overcome, needed ventilation help. They needed, help to breathe and to get to the hospital. The neighborhood though, around that area, they become, they're scared, or they're nervous. They don't know what is actually happening. What's actually happening. They can tell something's wrong. Maybe a day later, some of their vegetation is killed off and things of that nature.
Right.
So,
well, that's a scary picture, right? I mean, that is not smoke. We can agree that's not smoke, and everyone likes smoke. If it was smoke, everybody would come around and watch it. But because it's not going straight up, and sometimes it's coming back down, and it's green, yellow, that's scary. 100% scary. It's
never good to have anybody lose their home or a business to be affected by fire. However, statistically, especially in the United States, Lots of people deal with home fires, house fires. Almost every business deals with some sort of fire emergency. Firefighters are excited if that smoke, that plume, is black.
Right.
But if they see that color, they're like, I'm gonna go run some EMS calls.
Right, like that. The engine goes from
I'll take that medical call that's on the far west side.
It goes from 50 miles an hour to 22 miles an hour, right? Like just for safety, because they don't want to be first.
Don't be first in.
There was another guy who was very instrumental in my development, was Chief Zachard, and I worked with him at every level again, right? Like he was my lieutenant, he's my captain, he was my district, right? Yep. And so we were talking one day about this kind of scenario where if that plume was actually smoke, we would stand and breathe it in because we would want that soot on our face and we would want our helmet shield to be black and our helmet to be burned and our gear to be dirty. But that plume is a different color, and so everyone's like puts their thumb up and say, I'm close enough.
Yeah,
right?
as long as if I can put the incident in my
right.
If I put my thumb up and I can hide the incident behind my thumb, then I'm far enough away.
But both of them are just as equally dangerous. The gases that are in there are equally dangerous. But we just like that fire so much more.
I also learned along the way that, and maybe this is something to take away from this segment, is that as organized as you possibly will be or can be or strive to be, you're going to move and remove and change your zones, if you will, your hazard zones several times at a big incident. And it rang true. It doesn't matter if it was a fire where you had multiple ladder trucks up in the air, flowing water, or a hazmat call. You start out, I think the train derailment that happened, where we rush right into this, we're close on top of that scene, and then all of a sudden we're like, ooh, man, we probably need to back up. Mm-hmm. And I always found that to be just a challenge in and of itself.
Well, I think having that flexibility to understand that everything has to be dynamic makes you successful, because if you dig your heels in the ground and say, this is the line where I started at, I'm not backing up, I'm not moving forward, this is my spot, that's setting yourself up for not being successful overall in the
Do you think
incident.
that's I love that. Do you think that that's something that the fire service, I'm kind of reaching here. Did we inherit that from military operations where, you look at it and you say, hey, if you're going to dig in and get, just slaughtered, or are you willing to, move left, move right, maybe back up, whatever it is? I mean, is that what we're doing?
Well, we always describe ourselves, I think even in our rules and regs and SOPs, right? Like we just started, there's a sentence in there that we're a paramilitary organization. Yeah. And we were just talking about this the other day. Well,
This episode of the Original Firefighter Podcast is sponsored by Castle Contracting. Castle Contracting offers commercial and residential restoration, leading the industry in roofing, residential siding, gutters and downspouts, egress window installation, storm damage assessment and repair, and solar energy, saving you money and time. If you want to be treated like royalty, contact Castle Contracting to schedule a free inspection. Call them at 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. That's 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. Serving Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, Castle Contracting has you covered. Your home is your castle. Call Castle Contracting today.
Which part of the para are we military?
Is it Space Force?
I don't know, right? Like, are we, yes, sir, do we salute? I mean, I don't know. Where are we at? Like we have a rank structure and a command structure and a chain of command, right. But I don't know what other part of the military that we resemble anymore. Maybe 50 years ago, maybe we were a lot more paramilitary.
But don't you think that the military, because again, I like where we've been talking about how the fire service has changed. Is it possible that it's all changed? I mean, military wise, is there a kinder, gentler military out there? Or is it still my way or the highway?
Yeah, I don't know. I was not a military person. And that being said, if I had to do all over again, I would have been, if I knew where I was going to end up. But that's not neither here nor there. But I do think that I don't know. And that's my question that I ask is, how are we still related to the military? Because we have changed as a profession, and maybe they've changed right along with us.
Sure.
That I don't know.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I you know, this morning I did a 9/11 ceremony, and it was one of those things where every time I do something on September 11th, I think about the first responders. Something I've repeatedly said is that September 11th was one of those days where it's actually the only day that I could think of where citizens of this country actually saw in real time on their televisions that it was the firefighters and the police officers and the EMTs. They were the actual first boots on the ground at New York City and at the Pentagon. And trust me, I'm very well aware that at the Pentagon there was many military that responded, just given that it was a military institution. And then obviously Shanksville, Pennsylvania. But that was September 11, 2001 was that time when our public saw first responders almost responding and acting like the first line of defense. It was the wars afterwards that we entered into Afghanistan and then later on in Iraq, is that our military, you know, I love that idea where there's this image of the firefighters with the American flag, and then the soldiers are reaching back to grab that flag almost like a baton. And they're saying, we'll take it from here.
You could even say, look at the three different types of, because it was fire, EMS, and police first on scene for all three sites, right? But look at the difference in what it was, right? So you had FDNY, NYPD, then you had however many million governmental agencies that responded with federal firefighters,
right.
You know, DC firefighters. I'm sure there was some sort of on-scene, you know, emergency response for the Pentagon. But then moved to Shanksville, right? That was 100% volunteer response into the middle of the cornfield, right? So it's still the same job, but just done.
Have you been to all three sites?
I've been to all three sites, yeah.
Yeah, I have as well.
We actually went to the first time, this is a family story, but the first time that we went to Shanksville, we found it on accident. We were driving to the Outer Banks to go on vacation, and we stopped at a hotel for the night. And we get in there, and there's Shanksville, Pennsylvania memorial site. And when the first time we went there, it actually was just the wall. None of the other stuff was there. So the wall that separates the hollowed ground from where the buildings are now, and then the big wall that was on maybe the west side. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. So that was all that was there. But the interesting part was I saw this and I said, you're all going to be mad at me, but we're going to stop here tomorrow on the way because I'm never going to be passed here again, because it really is in the middle of nowhere outside of Pittsburgh is where we were near. Yep. But since we were going to the beach, everybody only had shorts for that day, and it was cold and rainy, and everybody was miserable. But we were there, and I actually have been back there since when the whole memorial is there. So I've had the opportunity to go to all three sites, and New York City, Pentagon, and Shanksville. I've done it. I've been there twice to each side, each place, and I got to tell you, you hit on something there where, you know, we can always continue to say, you know, like it's so horrific what happened at all three of those sites. And then you think about Shanksville, though, and you think about the fact that Pentagon and New York City had the resources that they had. And then think about Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Right. And it was what, you know, just it was whoever was available, you know, just a handful of. And I wasn't there, so, you know, however that played out, I just have to imagine that it was be as creative as possible to figure out how to handle something that, you know, what do I say? Career day. Yeah. You know, like how and why is this happening? Right. Well, it's irrelevant, right? Because now it's already happened. Yeah, and that circles back to it's not about if, it's going to be when, for no matter where you're at, right? Rural Pennsylvania, plane crash, passenger plane crash. Nowhere near an airport, right? Right. You know, how do you wouldn't even think to train for that, you know, response command. And that's what was to circle back around and very quickly. I just want to do a little bit of a, you know, kind of a cheers to the responders and all those lost on September 11th, and we respect everything that was involved in that situation. Our hearts and thoughts go out to them. You had started to talk about what was born out of 9/11.
and go ahead and, you know, drive out of that.
Yeah, right. So if you think about and you probably were part of this too. Something happens, and how do we fix it in our country? We throw money at it, right? And so the hazmat, the contamination, even the contamination, the technical rescue stuff, all of that was formalized and born following 9/11. And so all of the training that we received on the technical rescue side that allow you to be part of MABUS teams and USAR teams really stem from that incident. So as you know, these 20, 25-year guys' careers develop, that incident changed the opportunities that we were given for training and for specialized response professionalism, right? Like it completely changed my career. Like I can still remember sitting at Station 10 and there was a hazmat class coming up and we had to have so many people to go. The chief called and said, "Hey, Althoff, you're going to hazmat tech this day." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." And I went, right? And I went to Tech B. I went to 2 weeks later. I went to Hazmat Tech B, right? So back then it was 2 separate 40-hour classes.
Yeah.
But you didn't really understand how it happened, right? All of a sudden there was all these hazmat classes and we're going to fill them with firefighters. Well, it was because of that incident, right? Then rope tech became a thing, right? We actually did rope tech together. There's a very specific 1 full day of highline rescue that stems from things that happened there, right? And that's part of the whole program still.
I remember that day vividly, and I somehow found myself in the unique situation of being the one going across on the lines with with the basket. And when you look at that, from my point of view, it was like, oh, look what I'm doing, you know. But you asked me put the high line up today, I'd be like, where's Jeff Althoff? I need some help here.
And I would say I need a book, right? Like that's the thing. Like we can't say we're never going to do it because it does get done, and we have done it, right? So we would get there, but that is there because of we had to move, we had to go high to low, right? And we had to get things and people off from their pile, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then from there, we talked about the fact that, was it Presidential Directive 5 and 8?
Yeah.
Something like that is what created the NIMS and, National Incident Management System,
and
which is, just became, it was like we thought we had everything. Like, okay, so if you take these 5 or 6 classes, then you're good. Mm-hmm. And then we're like, let's add 5 more classes.
That's what it is. 100%.
And there's always another, thing it's just never ending.
Never ending. Yep. But it did. That changed it, and that sort of changed the way that we communicate, as far as 10 codes and plain language, and it got rid of a lot of this interdepartmental, interstate specifics, and now our communications are better. At least how we talk to each other is better on the radio because it's easier to understand. And if you work in a jurisdiction where you have multiple municipalities coming to work with you, it made their lives a lot better. Well,
and then I think that you're going to agree with me here, where the fire service, let's be honest, is that if you know what we're talking about, the fire service has literally absorbed almost everything. If it doesn't deal with law enforcement, if it's not a crime. And again, law enforcement out there doing things that, we actually, they're giving Narcan.
Narcan, right, yeah.
They're carrying AEDs. They're on the chest pumping, trying to, restart somebody's heart. I mean, they're doing those things. The fire service is like, well, we're doing all that, and then we just keep absorbing the next thing that's thrown at us. And, the technical rescue aspect of it, that's obviously been born out of 9/11. Emergency management. Because I noticed that you're wearing a shirt, the Ott House Pub. That's a shout out to the famous bar. And
I call it. It's a restaurant.
Okay.
It's a restaurant.
Okay, bar restaurant.
Right. Yeah.
Or can we just agree that it's a bar restaurant?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. There's a bar there and a restaurant. Okay. Probably one of the most impressive patches. Fire department. There are some. There's everything out there now. Mm-hmm. There's fire, law enforcement, EMS patches. Probably the most, one of the most impressive patchworks on their walls and everywhere.
It's in the bar too.
It's in the bar.
It's in the bar, like built into the bar
Yeah.
is patches. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Ott House in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and still today, Emmitsburg, I believe they still are 100% volunteer.
Correct. Yeah.
Fire department, fire hose brigade. I mean, they're very East Coast old school, which is, very cool and original. We love that. But the Ott House is also representative of the National Fire Academy. The National Fire Academy. I went out in the National Fire Academy. The first time I actually visited, I was a Fitchburg firefighter, and I went out there, and I think my first class was in 1993. And there was nothing about emergency management.
Yeah, now it has its own building, right?
And now it's got its own division.
Yeah.
So what have you done with that? What have you done National Fire Academy or emergency management?
And so again, working with you through the years, like you're the one that sort of opened my eyes to this opportunity that's there to train, and it's free training, right? Everything that's there is free. You have to buy your food, but if you have a department, usually your department will buy your food, through the cafeteria there. And if you're a social media person, you have to look up the NETC ice cream machine Twitter page. It's pretty funny.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah,
it's got the ice cream machine.
The ice cream machine has its own Twitter page. Yeah, because it's always broken. So when it works, like it's a really funny tongue in cheek thing. It's pretty good. But
that's great.
It's free, and it's about the education you get, but it's also about the ability to honestly sit and do this every night with somebody from Texas and Washington State and Florida and Maine, all in the same week in the same class.
Yeah.
Right. So whether you're there for a tactics class or a hazardous materials class or emergency management class, it's still people who want to sit and talk about their department and how they do things. How do you do it? And maybe that's better, right?
Well, I've been out to the NFA, the National Fire Academy. I don't know, several times, a lot of times, and I did learn. I figured it out. I think it was probably like half. I can't remember exactly. Maybe I've been out there 8 or 9 times. I think by the 4th or 5th time, I figured out like it's not necessarily about the class that you're taking.
No, right.
The class, let's say your class is incident operations at single story incident or single alarm incidents.
Right.
And then the next one is, response to multi-alarm incidents. Okay. So there's a whole series, and you can go down the road of fire prevention. I think you can go down the road of arson investigation. You can go down the road of command structure and all this stuff. And I got to this point where I'm like, it does not matter what the name of the class is called. It's more about you show up and you bring your viewpoints from your department, and then you intermix that with your classmates, and you just start to kind of glean or glom off of like, well, if you guys do it this way and I'm having a challenge back home trying to figure out how to do it, well, I might be able to figure this out with you. Mm-hmm. And it becomes probably one of the best little, like collaborations that the United States Fire Administration has ever put together.
100%. It's because it's how we share information from coast to coast, right? And so I've been there a few times, and I still have people who are from Texas or from the West Coast that I'll send an email to and be like, hey, remember that time we were talking about this? And I don't remember exactly what you said. How do you do it? Can you send me your SOPs, your rules and regs, whatever it is, right? Like if we're trying to fix something here, we don't have to reinvent it, right? Somebody probably already does it. And that's the big benefit of getting that education that's out there. Yeah. And
there's so many other great institutions across the country, and I know, absolutely, you and I went to CTAS.
Oh yeah.
In Mercury, Nevada.
Mm-hmm. So CTAS is the train one, and that's in Pueblo.
Sorry.
That's the radiation class. It's in Nevada.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So the radiation class in Mercury, Nevada, again, quite frankly, I was like, I can't even believe that I'm out here.
Right.
Like, I can't even believe that I have the opportunity to see the Nevada desert the way that they're using it. I can remember at that particular institution, they had I don't recall if I don't know if it's appropriate to call it an air base. I think it's an air base.
Yeah.
Where the drones were flying. They had Raptors and what's the other? The two big ones. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I remember them taking off and landing, and you had these remote pilots that were flying huge drones.
And that was like the beginning of it, right? Like that was, nobody had that. No, or maybe we had it, we just didn't know it, right? But I can remember doing laps at that base, right? Like you had to have your ID because you weren't supposed to be out moving around with ID, and it was very military. Even though it's not a military base, right? Like remember, it's a private security firm that secures that area.
Yeah.
But it was very military-like, and it appeared military. But I can remember thinking that, and I'm like, this is insane. And you're at the point where they tested the bomb, right?
Yes.
We saw that's where you're there, and you're learning about radiation, how it affects it on real things, right? Like we really did it.
They were testing atomic energy.
Right.
I mean, they were testing real, atomic bombs out there, and I remember standing on one of the craters, looking down there and, having, our radiation suits on and monitoring devices. And then again, and I keep coming back to this, it's like, this is the American Fire Service doing this.
And if you're in the fire service, you can go for free, right? Like that's one of those things where if no one says, hey, this is available to you, you just don't know it, right? So go find it.
Teeks being another one.
Teeks is another one, yeah. It's Anniston is another good hazmat place too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think probably Socorro.
The bomb class in New Mexico,
Yeah, Socorro, New Mexico, the bomb tech class that I took. That one is where I think things started to change for me. And this is where I'm going with this, is that we've talked about September 11th, and what was born out of that was technical rescue, emergency management, national incident management systems. How are we going to communicate if it's happening in New York City, or if it's happening in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, if it's happening in Chicago, Illinois? You look at the wildfires out west right now. Crazy. And this is year after year, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how are we going to all, and now I think we kind of know, like we understand, back to your point, is that communication solves a lot of problems if you do it right. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to communicate, if you're willing to understand how important that is. And I think that when you go to these classes, you understand even more so how important communicating with all services, fire, law enforcement, EMS, emergency management, city managers, county, whatever your local response is, up to your federal response. So all these classes are awesome. They are great. But the bomb class in Socorro was where I got my first taste of understanding that the fire service was now getting involved in criminal activity. I've said before on the show that as I was retiring from the Rockford Fire Department, my last major project was to figure out how we could introduce Rescue Task Force, which then led us to, hey, we don't need just turnout gear.
That topic changed our treatment plans and our operation for what we've always done, right? We always stayed cold zone, right? We're not going in there. We're not doing that. And then all of a sudden now we're hot zone providers of medical care with police protection.
Yeah.
Right. That's a huge change of, my safety first. Now my safety first is different, but it's still safety first for us because we're getting the proper PPE and police protection when we do it. But 5 years ago, we would have never done that. You
take active shooter events. I know that it's happened here, and not to get into the weeds about what's happened directly here, but, stabbing events over in England and, in the Netherlands and things of that nature, mm-hmm. in places where, they didn't see those types of activities, and all of a sudden it's just happening. And however that's happening, why it's happening, we're not here to debate that. I don't really give a shit. We care, but we're not here to debate whether world politics are playing certain roles. It's just the fact that it is actually happening.
And we have to mitigate it. Right?
Yeah.
Like it happens, we go. That's it. Yeah.
So as you've gone through all of your education, all your background, all those things that have developed who you are, how did you know when to lead? Well, how did you know how would you say to listeners and viewers, how do you know when you are ready to take on this stuff in a leadership role?
Yeah, I don't know if you ever know, right? You hope. I maybe hope is a better word. And I think you can't just wake up on Tuesday and be like, Wednesday, I'm going to do the job, right? So it's sort of your entire puzzle put together through your career. And you pick Socorro, New Mexico, and you pick this class, and you pick this call, and you pick this incident, and you pick this experience, and you put it all together, and then hope that you're ready to do it. And then you're going to get a chance. And then if you're successful, you learn from your successes, and you keep building, because every leader is going to have failures, right? We're not successful all the time in anything we do, and it's how do you respond to your failures is what I think makes you a leader, right? We can all manage incidents, but how do you respond to your failures, and how do you come backwards on those and make it better?
You ever had a wish you did it over? Do you have anything like that? Like man, I wish I could do that one over.
Nah, not really.
You don't?
No, and so this is
Oh,
funny.
I do. I have one in particular.
This is actually when I was brand new. I was riding the ambulance with Bill Hyde up at Station 9, and this terrible night. He looks at me, and I didn't know him, right? I was brand new. I maybe met him for 5 minutes, outside of work, and he goes, "What's something you would do over if you had it to do over?" Looks just right at me and does that and says that, and I thought about it, and I honestly haven't had, even to this day, I feel like everything I've done, I've learned from, right? I have grown from, I have become better, personally and professionally, socially, from everything that I've done. Have I made mistakes? Oh yeah, absolutely, right? But it's changed me into where I am today, and I'm pretty happy with the result that I have right now.
No, and again, this isn't trying to list your entire resume here.
Yeah.
The fact that you've been a great firefighter, a instructor at our academy, and you've also gone out there beyond our department, and you've served in roles at MABUS. You've been a part of the state response team with technical rescue, right?
On USAR, I was I was a hazmat guy, and then now I'm part of plans.
So you've moved on. I mean, now you're in that planning process.
Right.
You want to understand, how are things working on the back end, I think is the way I see it. How are we going to create the most robust system that can provide the best result?
Yeah. And like when I think about plans, like even as an incident commander, I'm trying to plan for the next 30 minutes or 15 minutes, however long the incident looks like it's going to take. Here's where I want to be in 15 minutes from now. And if we're not, then what this is, it's not working, So when I think of planning, I don't ever think of planning as being ready to go backwards. I'm always looking forwards. And how do I get that? How am I still making this incident go forward? And the people who are working at the incident can see progression and improvement.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of conversation so far about certainly 9/11 has been a big factor of our show today. We've done some conversation about you being prepared and knowing that there is a day and time out there, whatever department you're from, there's going to be something that comes at you that is going to really probably put you back on your heels. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have enjoyed, and I actually still continue to pursue, in post-retirement, other avenues in the fire service, teaching, instructing. I love doing it. It's in my DNA. I love doing it. But yet at the same time, there's always something out there that's looming that, you think you're ready. It's going to come out. It's going to challenge you. We don't know what that is. But it will probably most likely happen. And are you always thinking about that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you're not trying to figure out what it is that you don't know, right? There's things we know we don't know, and then there's things we don't know we don't know.
Yeah.
I'm always working towards what is it that I don't know, so I can decrease that column of things I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does, 100%.
Yeah.
I have a couple things that I want to bring up here, and I thought you might enjoy this. So I've got a couple things here in my hand. And this is 100% with respect. Is that, what do you think that is right there? Let's go with that one.
Well, this is probably maybe office window glass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the World Trade Center Tower. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this right here.
That's probably a plug from a standpipe or a hydrant or something, right?
It's actually an elevator. It's a counterweight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So these were donated by a FDNY firefighter that donated these pieces for the 9/11 memorial here we have here in Rockford, and I just thought you'd just be interested in seeing that these are actually artifacts from Ground Zero.
Yeah.
And every time I look at it, I touch it or hold it. It's like I have just the utmost respect for what happened that day. And so hopefully, you've had, I guess, a prideful moment to just share that with us here on the show. I've really enjoyed to have that conversation with you. But we are going to change and flip over to some lighter things.
Roger that.
And
yeah.
you're not probably prepared for this.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So what we're going to have a conversation about here is a little bit of baseball talk.
Okay.
Because I'm assuming that this is what you do on. Let me give me some background on your fanatic feeling about baseball.
So I'd say we've mentioned a couple of names, and I'd be hesitant to mention Dave Nordenberg because he likes to be discussed in public. But Dave and I are probably about as tight of friends as you could have, and during our career, we definitely bonded over the Chicago Cubs, and we've had events that we've attended. We collect autographs, right? We're both big Sandberg collectors, and so that is one of the things that I do off-duty relaxation, hobby type stuff is baseball, just all of sports. I have two sons that are heavily involved, and so I still actually get to play with. I'm still better than middle school kids at most sports still too, and so.
Most middle school
kids I'm still better than. Some of them aren't. Some of them not so much. They're better than me, but I'm still better. But yeah, so we collect. I collect a lot of paraphernalia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, okay, but you're being modest.
Oh, okay.
You collect a lot. What's a lot?
I have a big collection of baseballs and cards.
Yeah.
I'm a baseballs and cards guy.
So I've asked you I've asked you to bring a piece of memorabilia. What have you brought?
Yeah. So you said bring a favorite, right? And so sometimes people will say, "What's your favorite?" versus "What's your most expensive?" This is not by far my most expensive.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But people like different things for different reasons, right? And so it's a baseball that's signed it's a Sammy Sosa baseball with an inscription on it that says "God Bless America," and it's actually a September 11th, 2002 9/11 commemorative baseball.
Wow.
So this ball was used actually only on September 11, 2002.
Yeah.
But if you think
it
about...
was used.
No, this is not a used ball.
But it was signed. Okay.
This ball is what they used in all MLB games on September 11, 2002. So you can buy them. Like there are game used balls from there, but this is the ball. So if you notice, there's red and blue stitching.
It does. Yeah,
that's
you're right.
One of the things that I like red and blue stitched balls, or I like balls that have different colored stitching because usually they're only red. So All-Star balls will usually have there's a Colorado Rocky All-Star ball that's all purple stitching.
Okay.
Because their color's purple, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I like this ball. But I think if you think back to post 9/11 and what happened in our country, like what really put our country back into motion was baseball. Right, it was the New York Yankees with George Bush, and it was Sammy Sosa hitting the home run and carrying the flag around the bases when he did it. Right, like those are the things that I can remember that really started. I feel like that we started moving back in the right direction. So that's why this ball is one of my favorites. So America's
favorite pastime is what brought us back. You think? I love it.
That's my memory, right? Like that's my perception. Like you think about no planes flying, then the planes went back up, then baseball started.
Yeah.
And that meant to me that things were moving. Like it was bad, but we're already in recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that is awesome. So, well, to try to match, but I'm not going to be able to quite match that. But so I also brought, because you are a Cubs fan.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a Detroit Tigers fan.
Sure.
and this will become important here rather soon. But so I brought a signed Alan Trammell, and I was pretty proud of that. I can still. So baseball has been big in my life as well. Not to the degree of the collection that you and Dave Nordenberg have. Yeah. But so I've got the Alan Trammell, and you got the Sammy Sosa, the Cubs, and the Tigers. And
in all fairness, though, Trammell was also a Cub, right? He was a coach for the Cubs.
Yeah, but we don't want to talk about that.
All right.
I mean, God, this is don't bring the show down.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he was. Yeah, you're right.
So I was going to ask if I was with you when you got this, because I thought probably you had this at a Cubs convention, but I see you probably, I think I know where you bought it from, and I was probably with you when you bought it.
Yeah.
Just based on the labels, of who labels their baseballs like that. When
Right. Yep.
But anyway, I thought maybe you were with us at a Cubs caravan where he would have been at, because he would have been out at,
Giovanni's, right? Yeah. No, and I have had the opportunity to go to some signings with you.
Right.
Actually, I was able to meet in Ernie Banks, I think.
Ernie Banks, and I think maybe even Joe Montana. Did you go with us?
Joe Montana.
Joe Montana stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Got that. So now everyone knows I'm a Niners fan.
Yeah.
So so a little bit of baseball talk. We got Sammy Sosa, Cubs. We got Alan Trammell, Detroit Tiger, and the baseball sitting here. Where does this, when you're not firefighting, does this still play an active role in your heart? Like, do you love the baseball as much as you've ever did?
Oh,
still
yeah,
today?
all of sports. Like, guys will say, "Hey, have you ever watched this movie?" And my answer is always no. Like, I'm not a movie person.
Gotcha.
I am I would watch Oakland versus San Francisco at 9:45 at night on some random channel,
and just put it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing with baseball is everyone says it's boring, but there's a lot of strategy, right? Like, how do I get from first to second? Like, that's what I like about it. How do I get from second to third?
Well, isn't it interesting that the fire service is very much like baseball, where it collects every single stat, and then it's like they're dialing in the lineup, the transfers, and trying to set teams up to be the best that they can possibly be and function together, know? So, I mean, I find a lot of correlation. It's one of the things that's been fun in my journey with baseball is I just got done completing all baseball parks in America.
Right. I saw
I've
that.
been to every baseball park in America. I have to circle back around, go back to Toronto, Cincinnati, and Texas Rangers, because they've all now those three have built new stadiums. But hey, that's fine. I mean, if that's what I have to do in retirement, I'm totally good with doing
and
that.
See, like I would rather go to Wrigley Field 37 times than I would rather go to all the baseball stadiums.
Good Lord.
So
good Lord. All right. Well, that's going to be awesome for us to start jumping into what's going to come at you next right now.
Okay.
So we have this thing on Original Podcast, or the Original Firefighter Podcast show, where we put you through what we call the machine. And the machine is a little quiz to see how good you are.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Why not?
You might. Well, so you're playing for the other. If you crack this one, then you'll be playing for 4 extras.
This one's not ready yet.
See how we're not real sophisticated here. Like, we don't have like major prizes. Although I did think like, well, maybe I'll put $10 on it and see.
That's a major prize right there.
But Coors Light.
Yeah,
it is special.
Yeah,
it is special that you got your own 6-pack.
Gotcha.
I don't know that that's going to happen for anybody else ever.
That's fair. It's funny though, like, so if it's funny, I've already had this conversation today. If you really knew me, you would know that I don't like the silos. I like the regular size cans.
But there's a one bigger.
I consider this one a silo.
There's another bigger.
I know, but those are like,
you know what?
Those are 32
You don't have to have this. You jerk.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Man, good Lord, this is how bad it was at Rescue 2. So here's the deal. So what we're playing for is that if you get all 10 right, you get to have my Alan Trammell baseball. But if you don't get all 10 right, then I get to have yours.
Yeah. I think I have 8. I think I have 8 Alan Trammells at home, just so you know.
That felt like a diss there.
He came through Rockford, right? So if you want to talk about like stock, that was Dave and I's deal. Like, we would get 8 of everybody who came through.
Oh, we're all, trust me. I mean, if some of our listeners are from RFD, they're going to know what stalkers we're talking about.
Yeah.
You guys, you and Dave I can still name the entire 1984 Detroit Tiger lineup when they won the World Series. I can still name all the people that were playing at the positions. That's pretty good.
So when you asked me to bring a ball, the second ball that I had that I was going to bring when I jokingly said just one is an 84 Cubs ball that has the vast majority of people on it too.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
are you ready to play?
Go.
Okay, so what we're playing for is you get all 10 right, you're going to take all 5 of these with you.
Okay.
That's not really fair. Actually, this is more for fun, but if you get one wrong, I get to wrap you with this bat on your knuckles.
There you go.
Is that fair enough?
No.
Come on now.
I'm out on that.
It's just for entertainment value at this point.
Your entertainment.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Question number 1. How many World Series have the Chicago Cubs won?
3?
Ding, ding, ding. You are right. Do you know the years?
1918, 2016, and 40.
Wow, you were way off.
Oh, what is it?
You stop.
Oh.
But 3, so it's right. 1907, 1908.
7, 8, okay.
And 2016.
Okay.
7, 8, 2016.
45 may have been the last World Series appearance before. I don't know. There's something in there about the 40s. Go
Okay.
on. Sorry.
All right, so question 2. What was the original name of the team? What was the original name of the team?
Was it the Wiegman? They played at Wiegman Field, but it was. I don't know.
It's not that.
What was it?
But that'll be important for you later.
Okay.
They were the Chicago White Stockings.
White Stockings. Okay. Yep. Okay.
They were a charter member of the National League in 1876.
Okay. Here's an interesting little side note on
go
that. So I believe the manager was Albert Spalding, who was actually born in Byron, where I live now.
Spalding.
Yeah, Albert Spalding is a huge Spalding Sports.
I was going to say.
That guy is from Byron, Illinois.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, yeah.
And Spalding being the sports.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's great. This is why we do the quiz show here.
Yeah.
The machine. You're in the machine. All right. By how many home runs? So this is a numbers question. By how many home runs did Mark McGwire out-hit Sammy Sosa in 1998 to achieve an MLB single-season home run record with 70 home runs?
4, because he hit 66, right?
Ding, ding, ding. So Mark McGwire hit 4 more home runs than Sammy Sosa did. So therefore, MLB single-season home run record, Mark McGwire owns that right now.
No, Barry. Barry has it. Yeah, Barry.
Well, no. That's the bonus question.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm saying is Mark McGwire, as far as I know, he owns the single season, the most home runs in one single season.
I thought Barry hit 72.
Did he?
I think so.
Okay. We're open to being corrected here.
Too bad we don't have Google or something, right?
Well, that wouldn't be fair.
Okay.
And plus, we want our viewers and listeners to get a little bit of education out of something here.
Fair.
But that was going to be the bonus. So who holds the all-time Major League Baseball lifetime home run record, which is...
That's Barry, right?
Yeah. Barry Bonds, 762.
Yeah.
Barry Bonds, a little controversy there.
He's a great athlete, no matter what you think about him, right?
Yeah.
He's a great athlete.
Yeah. Okay, question 4. Which Chicago Fire Department engine company is housed across the street from Wrigley Field?
Well, that's 78.
Engine 78. This guy knows his stuff. Engine 78, you're right. You ready for more?
Yeah, but what's the ambulance? There's an ambulance there too, and I can never remember the ambulance.
I don't pay attention to EMS.
I knew you would like that part.
I do, but what is it?
I don't know. I can never remember.
Well, then why did you don't know either?
I thought maybe you would know.
Just the engine.
Okay.
Question 5. The Chicago Cubs, owned by the Ricketts family since 2009, are they the Chicago Cubs? The question is, are they the first, second, third, or fourth most valuable team in Major League Baseball?
Oh, geez. Most valuable? I would say I'm going to go second.
You're going to go second.
Yeah. I would take Yankees.
Who do you think's the most? I mean,
Yankees. I would say Yankees are one.
Second. Who's second? Cubs.
Cubs. That's what I would say.
Okay.
And then probably I would have to put the Dodgers in there somewhere.
I got to put you out of your misery. They're the fourth.
Fourth. Are the Dodgers ahead of them?
So it's Yankees, Sox, Dodgers.
Yeah.
Cubs.
I would have gone Red Sox as 2 or 3 too. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
All right. Number 6. There's a flag. There's a flag on the roof of Wrigley Field that says Hack 191, Hack 191. What does that refer to?
It's Hack Wilson's RBI total from the season that he hit the record 191 RBIs. I actually used to have one of those flags.
Really?
Mm-hmm. They used to sell them at Cubs convention for $250. And so I had like 4 or 5 different of those rooftop flown flags. And I think I have 2 left. I have a Kerry Wood, a KW on one side, 34 on the other, and the other one's an FJ31 for Fergie Jenkins.
Nicely done.
I forgot.
I put this together.
So I actually
solely
have 3.
for you. I did my research. I wanted to make this rewarding, challenging, fun, and all those kind of things.
I forgot I have 3. I actually have an 84 too. It's a white flag and it says 1984 on it, and it's autographed by probably 26 players.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll have to maybe send us some photos, of your collection, or try to give some perspective, if you will, because I know I already knew it was awesome.
Yeah.
But the fact that you got that one right out of the gate, yes. So it is. He is right. You are right. It's for Hack Wilson's 191 RBIs in 1930. 1930. Major League Baseball record to this day. All right, question 7. What was the original name of Wrigley Field?
Right. Is that Weigman Field?
Weigman Park.
Yeah. Weigman Park, yep.
Yeah. Charlie Weigman. He built the park in 1914, and then for 12 years, it remained that way, and then it was changed to Wrigley Field.
Because I think they're both gums, right? So Weigman Gum, I believe that was his fortune as well.
Sure.
And then Wrigley bought Weigman because didn't Weigman make Blackjack Gum or something like that?
Did.
Yeah,
they did. You're knocking it out of the park. All right. Question 8. What Cubby is the only player to win back-to-back MVP awards?
Oh, that's Ernie Banks.
Bonus.
58, 59.
Wow. You're crushing it, man. These Coors Lights are looking very promising for you.
Yeah. It's without my hat on as well. If I had my hat on, I'd be even smarter.
Yeah, you are a sexy man with the hat on. Yes, you are. All right, question 9. Question 9. This former Cubs pitcher was inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in 1991 and played basketball with the Harlem Globetrotters during his off seasons.
Oh, Fergie Jenkins.
You gotta state it in form of a question.
Oh, who's Fergie Jenkins? Right. So this is
Jeopardy,
Yeah. So Fergie Jenkins is probably one of the nicest professional athletes that we've ever met in our life.
Yeah.
One of the very first stalking events that we attended, we went out to the Iowa Cubs specifically because he was doing something out there with Bob Feller, and Dave and I went out there, and it was an absolute blast. And that was one of our very first things. And I probably have 70 Fergie Jenkins autographs.
Really?
Yeah. He's just such a nice person. Just a really great person. Yeah.
You'd say the same of Ryan Sandberg, would you not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right? Oh yeah, I have way more Sandberg stuff than Fergie Jenkins.
That's what I recall, and a lot of it's been around being, you and Dave. Is that you guys referred to, Ryan Sandberg as being super, super nice, approachable.
Yeah. There's a Fergie Jenkins story that's real quick that he did a thing for when the Rockford Riverhawks were here. There was a fan fest up at Hard Hats. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
So and he was there and he stayed until the end, and we sat at the bar and he let every person at the bar wear his Hall of Fame ring. While we just sat there and jibber jabbered with him. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah.
So there's a bonus to this question. So you're right. So Fergie Jenkins, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1991. He played basketball with the Harlem Globetrotters on his off seasons. What other famous Cubs pitcher does Fergie Jenkins share the number 31 with?
That's Greg Maddux.
Wow, man.
That one's pretty easy though.
Is it though?
Well, so I don't know. Maddux just had was it on?
Because I think that there's So here's the interesting part is I think that there's been 6 players that have had their numbers retired from the Cubs, but there's only 5 numbers because Jenkins and Maddox shared the number 31.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. See, I did that all without looking at, I did my research with you.
Right. So
I didn't want you to show me up.
We have
100%.
We have a brick at Wrigley Field. They did the paver thing at Wrigley Field, and on my brick it has all of those numbers of those players that have retired numbers. Yeah, that's all.
Did you put your ID number on there?
No, it's all just those numbers plus Sammy's number, and it says UFWA on the bottom of it, and that's an old going back to Weigman Park. That was I believe it was a Swedish word that they would yell.
Ufta.
Ufwa. It was OFWAH. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of one of those weird things. Like you'll be walking around and see that word. You'd be like, what the heck is that? Well, it's an old Cubs West Side Rooters tradition. So
this has been fun. So we got one last question. You've done very well.
Okay.
All right. Question number 10. What American League team did the Chicago Cubs defeat to win the World Series in 1908? One more time for your answer.
Oh, geez, I don't know.
What AL American League team did the Chicago Cubs defeat to win the World Series in 1908?
I don't know that one.
What?
I'm going to guess the Tigers because you asked the question.
Very good. I was about to shove this baseball right in your face.
Right.
Yes, the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
They beat. So, Cubs. They beat the Detroit Tigers in 1908. Nice job.
Thanks.
Good job, man. That was great. This is yours.
Thanks.
Don't drink it while you're driving. Don't do that.
Never. Not safe.
But you did that. You got it very good. This has been awesome. I have had such a good time with you, and as we go, kind of start to wrap this up. So you're a huge baseball fan. You obviously have the American Fire Service, near and dear to your heart. What's important as you think about the next thing that you're going to do? Is it going to be in the fire service? Is it going to be something else? Have you not figured that out yet?
Well, I don't think anyone really ever knows, right? Like I sort of think when you leave the fire service, it's a jump into the unknown.
Yeah.
Because it's.
I feel like you won't ever give it all up.
Well, I will. I think you have
so?
to eventually. At some point, you become not relevant, right? Like you think about some guys that have stayed too long or taught too long or tried to be part of the group. And at some point, everything changes, right? You'll see an entire changeover of younger personnel, and you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do with yourself because every third day they give you the clothes to wear. Every third day you have to be somewhere at 8:00, and you have a series of things that we do. When you talk about being a scheduled person, or what did you call yourself before?
OCD.
OCD, right?
Yeah.
That's scheduled. I call it being scheduled.
Oh, it's very scheduled.
And no one likes change. That's one of the things we don't like.
But change is what does us in.
I know.
Right?
It does, 100%, but we don't like it. And so you don't like it. And I think that what relaxes me, or what I think I would like to do, is I like produce. I like fruits and vegetables. And I know we talked about this before. And people don't believe me when I say I truly want to be the guy.
Pay attention here, everyone.
I truly want to be the guy who rotates the avocados, right? Who finds the good mangoes. Because when somebody gets a good piece of fruit or a good vegetable and they bite into it and it's like refreshing. Like that's how I want to make people. That's what role I want to play in other people's lives outside of the fire service.
For some reason, I see you now with a fruit stand outside of spring training at Hohoken Park or whatever they're calling the Wrigley Field of Arizona. I see you having your own fruit stand.
See, but I don't want to be the boss of it. I just want to show up. Like my job is to work from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and do this for a couple hours. We've all spent plenty of time making decisions that are critical. I want to just not do that.
Yeah.
I want to be told this is what you're going to do, and I'll go do it. You know. So I think that at some point, that's the relaxation of your mind that you're after, is just being a regular citizen again and driving around mindlessly for every day. You know? So, yeah.
I've enjoyed this time with you, and as we start to wrap this up, let's just remember that there's always baseball.
Always.
I mean, there it is. There's always baseball.
Yeah.
And we've had a great time. You did a great job on the machine. I hope you've had a great time, and we want to have you back again. I just want to make sure that we're always thinking about that the American Fire Service is there for a reason. It's always going to be there after, you and I are done with it. And I think there's a degree where we're not always, like, we're not done with it. Like, it's just in there. We're always going to talk about what was, and then there's the future. And I think that's what's great about what we're trying to do at Original Firefighter is making sure that people understand that the American Fire Service is special. It's always been there, and it's probably going to always be there as long as this country exists. So I've had a great time having you on the show. I just want to just make sure that our viewers for today's episode understand that September 11th, 2024 is special. It is the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. We've done our best to pay homage and respect and love those who have given their lives and sacrificed for so many. And we will continue to do that at Original Firefighter. We just want to make sure that you are safe and you take care of each other. And remember, our gear is for your off days. Our podcast is here for your off days. And we wish you the best and be safe. This episode of the Original Firefighter Podcast is sponsored by Castle Contracting. Castle Contracting offers commercial and residential restoration, leading the industry in roofing, residential siding, gutters and downspouts, egress window installation, storm damage assessment and repair, and solar energy, saving you money and time. If you want to be treated like royalty, contact Castle Contracting to schedule a free inspection. Call them at 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. That's 877-512-4207 or go online and visit castleexteriors.net. Serving Illinois, Wisconsin, and Kentucky, Castle Contracting has you covered. Your home is your castle. Call Castle Contracting today.